Vince McMahon once cut a promo on an episode of SmackDown about how unfair life is. If you haven't seen it, go check it out after you watch every video we've ever made in a row. You're gonna love it. Anyway, Vinnie Mac talked about cutting people in line, and how someone like himself would aggressively do so because they can. It's not fair, but neither is life, or as it turns out, mixed martial arts. Today's all about fighters who by sheer force of will, by massive finishes, by huge moments, and by honestly a whole host of lucky circumstances, ended up skipping the line for UFC gold. These weren't fast-tracked contenders, these were sudden leaps out of seemingly nowhere from wins that either shouldn't have warranted it, or came way too soon to justify their being in the bout in the first place. I'm Tommy from MMA On Point, and these are the 10 exact moments fighters leapfrogged the whole division. Number 10, Shogun Rua versus Chuck Liddell. When Mauricio Shogun Rua came into the UFC, he was supposed to be the next big thing. Minus a fluke injury, the young Brazilian went unbeaten in Pride and had many thinking as he made the hop over to the US MMA scene that he could potentially be the best light heavyweight in the world. Then a plucky Forrest Griffin dragged him into deep waters for the upset loss. Not the best start, but next Shogun would get a chance to avenge that fluke injury loss to Mark Coleman in Pride, and that he did, scoring a third-round TKO. While not a huge win, legendary names hold weight, and that couldn't have been more true than with Rua's next opponent, Charles David Liddell. The Iceman's career had thawed considerably by the time UFC 97 rolled around, having gone just 1-3 in his last 4 with 2 big finishes that had people calling for him to retire.
The thing with Chuck is one of my best friends. He's like family to me. I was going to make him retire after his last fight.
The Shogun fight only further stoked the flames of concern, as the Brazilian would destroy the former champion in the first 5 minutes. It was, of course, a huge win for Rua, but it certainly didn't warrant a title fight. That was, of course, unless the only viable option for a title challenger in Rampage Jackson decided to go coach tough instead of try for the gold again. Spoiler alert, that's exactly what happened, and your boy got his chance. Rua would get screwed out of a decision in his first attempt, but take the crown in the rematch, only to run into JBJ right after.
Them's the breaks.
Number 9, Jessica Andrade versus KATLYN CHOOKAGIAN. One of the easiest ways to skip an entire division and get yourself a shot at some gold is to be a big timer from a different division. Case in point, Jessica Andrade. The Brazilian fighter came into the UFC as a bantamweight, tried that out for 2 years, didn't like the results, somehow got herself to strawweight, a 20-pound jump, started kicking ass, 3 straight wins put her in a title bout she'd lose against Joanna Retired.
How could you do it?
She followed that up with 3 more wins and a title bout she would be victorious in against Rose Namajunas. She coughed up the gold in her next bout with Zhang Wei Li before losing a rematch with Thug Rose. A few months later, Andrade decided she'd seen enough of that buzzsaw of a strawweight title picture. She was heading to flyweight. Jessica's first opponent would be KATLYN CHOOKAGIAN. Blonde fighter was ranked number 1 at the time. Number 1 in the division, right out of the gate. The line had officially been skipped. And when Andrade emphatically ended CHOOKAGIAN's night in less than 5 minutes with some body blows, the promotion was ready to give the former strawweight champ a chance at gold in a new division, all off the strength of that one win, and the fact that Valentina Shevchenko desperately needed new and exciting opponents. But that's neither here nor there. Jessica would succumb to the bullet in round 2. She returned to strawweight earlier this year. Number 8, Cody Garbrandt versus Thomas Almeida. Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, now the whole team fucking here. Drake might as well have written that song about Cody Garbrandt's 2016. The young blood out of Team Alpha Male started the year unranked. He'd ended as the UFC bantamweight champion. The leapfrogging began after a win over Augusto Mendez gave still unranked Cody a fight with number 7 Thomas Almeida. At 21-0, the Brazilian was massive hype and had just earned 3 straight performance of the night finishes the year prior. So when No Love KO'd him in the first round, he sucked all that hype away like he was Shang Tsung stealing a soul. Garbrandt was officially on the map and number 8. He would then for some reason fight number 11 Takeo Mizugaki. Didn't matter. Murder, death, kill in under a minute. Cody had quickly skipped to the front of the line, and in his next bout he would face TAM Boogeyman and divisional champion Dominic Cruz. Now, was it just the incredible wins that got him there? It was certainly a huge chunk of it. The other thing was the whole alpha male rivalry with the Dominator. The two met at UFC 207, and we all know the story. God tier Cody showed up and earned a UD victory, completing his leapfrog with gold. Something not all the fighters on this list were able to achieve, let alone against an all-time great and legend in the sport. Number 7, VITOR Belfort versus Marvin Eastman. Sometimes just looking scary as hell out there can really elevate your position division fast. Upon returning to the UFC from Pride in 2002, Vitor Belfort was actually meant to be Tito Ortiz's next title challenger, despite only having fought once in the division 4 years previous. Talk about leapfrogging. But Ortiz couldn't make the date, and instead Vitor was defeated by Chuck Liddell on the hastily thrown together UFC 37.5 card. At 43, Belfort would fight Marvin EASTMAN. The Beastman did defeat Rampage Jackson in his pro debut for the King of the Cage Super Heavyweight Championship, but Vitor would be his first UFC opponent, and he'd gone 2-2 in his last 4, losing to Rich Franklin and Vernon White, which is absolutely the most damning loss. White was 17-22 at the time of their bout. Basically not a guy that was in the title picture. Belfort, who had really made a mark in his early UFC career performances, especially a 44-second finish of Wanderlei Silva, opened a freaking canoe on Eastman's head with a nasty knee in just over a minute. It was a devastating stoppage. The Phenom looked like $1 million, and this was on the undercard of the Couture-Liddell interim title fight. So when Randy knocked off Tito at the next show, Scary Vitor hopped over the rest of the division to get his go at gold. The fight would sadly end with a corneal abrasion in the opening minute, which did count as a win, but Belfort would lose to Randy in the rematch that summer. Interestingly, his next shot at the division's title would come almost a decade later and was also unwarranted when he filled in to fight John Jones on short notice at UFC 152, having not fought at 205 pounds for 4 years. Number 6, KHAMZAT CHIMAEV versus Gilbert Burns. Alright, so every other entry on this list has a precise moment, a finish that really indicated, hey, this guy is skipping the line and he's taking everybody's cookies with him to Title Town. KHAMZAT CHIMAEV doesn't have that one moment in his bout with Gilbert Burns at UFC 273, but the fight itself altogether, all 3 rounds, is kind of one giant moment, if you will. Hell, his whole career is kind of one. The Chechen Wolf has had a really interesting rise up the ranks. He comes into the UFC a middleweight in 2020, subs unranked John Phillips. 10 days later, he's fighting at welterweight, TKO's unranked Reese McKee. They book him just 2 months later. He's now fighting unranked GM3 at middleweight, with the UFC already announcing that they were booking a bout for CHIMAEV with former title contender Damian Maia next.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
I mean, he beat Reese McKee. A 17-second stoppage of Mershar got everybody even more hyped. Then KHAMZAT got COVID and was going to retire and was gone for over a year. His return would be against Lijing Liang, his first ever ranked opponent at number 11, not even in the top 10. He demolishes him. What's next? Oh, just recent title contender and number 2 Gilbert Durino motherfucking Burns. Boers may have burned through his first 4 opponents no problem, but that would not be the case with Gilbert. The pair had a knockdown drag out for 15 minutes, resulting in CHIMAEV earning the decision victory, a number 3 ranking, and likely as soon as possible a bout for welterweight gold. Number 5, Alex Pereira versus Sean Strickland. Sometimes a great storyline can really propel your career. After all, this is the fight-selling business, and ever since Alex Pereira joined the UFC in 2021, fans immediately wanted to see him fight middleweight champion Israel Adesanya, despite the fact he'd only ever had 4 pro bouts. Why? Because he KO'd Stylebender in a kickboxing match at Glory of Heroes 7 in 2017. Left hook, good night. It's the only time Izzy has ever been stopped in his combat sports career, and so naturally, being the Joe Duffy to Adesanya's Conor McGregor, if the guy could bang, it wouldn't take much to get him in the title picture, and that turned out to be the case, as Pereira, who prior to UFC 276 last fought unranked Bruno Silva at Fight Night 203 in his second bout with the promotion, was given number 4 Sean Strickland on the undercard of Izzy's most recent title defense. Talk about a great setup. The UFC even said going in that the winner would be next in line, despite the fact that Alex was still unranked going into the contest. Didn't matter. Left hook, good night again. Strickland, who was starting to gain some hype, got demolished within a round. And that's it. Pereira KO'd 4chan on legs, and now we got the rematch of the century. Well, maybe not that dramatic, but Alex has certainly jumped the line because this bout is so highly anticipated, and it couldn't come at a better time as the champion's last few defenses have left fans wanting a bit more action. Number 4, Michael Chandler versus Dan Hooker. In September of 2020, we all found out that Bellator's lightweight golden boy Michael Chandler was heading to the UFC, and people were pretty jacked about it. Mike is a madman in the cage, at the gym, on the microphone. He's like a sentient energy drink that started a career as a motivational speaker / mixed martial artist. Another example like Vitor of truly jumping the line, Chandler was the backup if somebody dropped out of the title fight between Khabib Nurmagomedov and Justin Gaethje at UFC 254 on the Island of Fight. Luckily for the sanctity of the sport, that didn't come to pass, but 3 pay-per-views later, Mad Mike would make his much-anticipated debut against a real hard hitter in number 6 Dan Hooker, which sounded about like the right spot given that Chandy hadn't even fought in the UFC yet, but was well established enough in Bellator to warrant somebody of some rank. 2.5 minutes in, Mike melted Hooker to the "oh fuck that was awesome" of just about everybody, and then he did a super cool backflip. Given Dan's tough guy image, it was the perfect opponent to wipe out in such devastating fashion. Following the fight, Chandler cut a Ric Flair promo, and it was vacant title time. Michael would face Stu Bronx later that year and come up short despite an exciting first round, but hey, considering he got that shot off the Hooker win, there might be some more opportunities for him to leapfrog the ranks again with a victory or two. Number 3, Nate Quarry versus Pete Sell. You know your title shot isn't warranted when the commentary team is trying to justify it during your walkout. The Ultimate Fighter has produced 10 UFC champions and a bunch more challengers. So to say that somebody came from tough and ended up in the title picture, well, that's not a controversial or unexpected thing to happen in 2022. In 2005, however, things were a lot different. The first season had just happened, and while yes, it was a massive success and the catalyst for the UFC's eventual explosion in popularity, having been on the show was still considered a reality TV fast track to the UFC over potentially more qualified fighters.
I can't believe you've done this.
Especially if you didn't win the season like Nate Quarry. Nate was forced out of the competition because of an injury, but remained on the show and was a popular figure. He would get a chance to fight on the finale undercard and won with a first-round TKO. Next, he fought Shoney Carter, who the commentators continually called a veteran of the sport, which is never a good sign. By that time, Shoney was 54 fights into his career and hadn't had a win in the UFC since his iconic spinning back fist on Matt Serra 4 years prior. Nate made quick work of the veteran, earning a TKO in just over 2.5 minutes. Next, Quarry fought Pete Sell, whose only claim to fame was being the 4th guy in a row to beat Phil Baroni. Nate would TKO him in just 42 seconds, and suddenly the reality TV guy was the first tough contestant to be in a UFC title fight. It was a bold move to put him in there, especially off the victory over Sell, and the results were disastrous, with Quarry getting devastatingly KO'd in the first round by champion Rich Franklin. Number 2, Dan Henderson versus Hector Lombard. Never underestimate the power of a good pay-per-view poster. Dan Henderson had absolutely no business fighting Michael Bisping at UFC 205 for the middleweight title. The last time he'd had a relevant win in the division was against the Count at UFC 100 7 years previous, opting out of an earned title fight as a result to head to Strikeforce. But that's also why this fight happened, because the finish of Bisping was so iconic, so important to both men, and a rematch looked fantastic on a poster. Those good nostalgia feels. But how in the hell did we get here in 2016 when a rematch would have been more appropriate in 2009? Well, we all know Mike unexpectedly won the division's title at UFC 199 when he filled in on short notice to defeat champion Luke Rockhold. On the undercard of that pay-per-view was divisional number 15 Dan Henderson versus unranked Hector Lombard. Hendo had lost 6 of his last 8 fights and was basically on his way out after 19 years of wear and tear. His opponent hadn't had a win in 2 years and was making his UFC middleweight debut. Not exactly a title eliminator, but in the most bizarre of moments, Henderson, who had a head kick caught by Lombard, swung the strongest of old man elbows at the Cuban fighter and absolutely deaded him. The brutal and shocking KO was a hell of a highlight and was the catalyst for Henderson's hopping over the entire top 15 to fight Bisping in one final career bout. This entry is particularly leapfroggy, considering how many viable title challengers there were at the time in the division. To be fair though, the fight would end up being awesome, with Dan coming up short on the cards. Number 1, Anderson Silva versus Chris Leben. Man, everything was just perfect about the UFC debut of Anderson Silva in 2006. We're a year into the tough boom. There's a ton of fans who have never even heard of the Spider now watching the UFC, but they do know and love the shit out of season alum Chris Leben. The Crippler didn't win the season, but he did TKO Jason Thacker on the prelims of the finale and went on to piece together 4 more victories, all of which took place on the new Spike TV fight nights, which were free and meant if you were one of those fans that came from tough, you were getting to watch Leben do his thing card after card, building his resume up over the course of that year and earning a middleweight title eliminator. All Chris had to do was beat this new guy, this Anderson Silva dude. Never even fought in the UFC. Sorry, tough fans, your boy was going down and going down hard. In just 49 seconds, Silva unleashed Kneepocalypse on Leben, earning the KO victory. The tough noobs couldn't believe their eyes. It was the first time the super durable crippler had been stopped in his entire career, career. It was perfect. The free TV, the opponent, the finish, the dance afterwards. You couldn't have asked for a better setup to have Silva leapfrog everybody at middleweight and take on Rich Franklin next. We all know the tale from here. UFC 64, Anderson becomes champion, and then he won some more fights after that. Big ol' shout out to my dude Luke Taylor for editing this video together. You can find him and his awesome digital art on Twitter at @cooltome_. A big thank you to Ben Rosette, who provided that sweet tune you heard in the intro. Check out his music by clicking the link in the description and go give him a follow on his Instagram and Twitter page at Ben Rosette. Thanks for watching. Please give us a like and subscribe. We've got 3 new videos or more for you every single week. Let us know what you thought of the video in the comments below. Follow On Point MMA on Twitter, and have yourself a wonderful day.